Welcome to another Show and Tell Live. My name is Carrera and I'm a culture editor at Fashion Snoops. We're so glad all of you guys can join us today. If you haven't joined us before for Show and Tell Live, Show and Tell really started as this internal meeting between all the editors where we would kind of show each other what books we were reading, what podcasts we were listening to, new innovations, different products that we were seeing. And when you tune into this, you really find that this is kind of the start of our forecasting methodology. It's kind of that coming together and brainstorming, showing that we have this, you might have this gut feeling of, I think that this is a trend, but what do you guys think? So this is definitely, you're getting let in on a little secret when we come together for show and tells, and you'll find that what we show here will turn into reports to macro trends that then influence color. So we're really glad you guys can join us for these and that we've made them available during the pandemic. Before we get into this, I'd like to hand it off to Sarah to give you guys just a few announcements.
Thanks, Carrera. Hi, everybody. It's great to be back with you all for Show and Tell. Just before we get started, I do want to say that we are in the chat and Q&A box. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to direct them there. We're all monitoring the chat and we love interacting with you. You can also set your chat box to all panelists and attendees, and that way everyone who's attending the webinar, as well as all the panelists, can see your chats and respond, and we can have a little conversation back and forth. So that can happen just by clicking the little blue button next to the 2 in your chat box. I also just want to let you know that we are having a Spring Summer 21 Women's Runway recap webinar next Tuesday, October 13th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. There will be a separate registration link for that, so I'll put that in the chat box in just a second. But we all know that Runway this season was different, just like everything else in 2020. So our VP of Women's Wear, Melissa Moylan, who you will also hear from today, we'll be breaking down all of the trends and top takeaways from New York, Milan, London, and Paris. So we hope to see you next Tuesday for that webinar. And with that, I'll pass it back to Carrera and we'll get started with today's show and tell.
All right, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. So up first today, we have Jay. Hey, Jay.
Hey. Hi, how is everyone doing? I'm the VP of Home here at Fashion Snoops, and my first links are about Julia Watson. If anybody is familiar with our site, we obviously do trend forecasts, and one of our trend forecasts for spring 22 was called Rebirth. And one way that we really like to, when we're looking at everything from a cultural and design perspective, we really like to do a lot of interviews with different designers and architects, et cetera, to, really get a human perspective as to what's happening. Julia Watson was an influencer for our Rebirth sentiment, and I had the sincere pleasure of interviewing her for this series. She is an author, designer, architect, city planner, but what she has really done is put her foray into re-looking at Indigenous design. Her book, which I have right here, which is really amazing, is called Low Tech Design by Radical Indigenism, and it really studies the idea that during colonization and during the European Enlightenment, a lot of those traditional value sets from Europe were actually implemented through the rest of the world. So whether it was Asia or Africa or India, even the US. So a lot of the architecture and city planning really went towards what was contemporary in Europe. Versus what a lot of the indigenous peoples of those regions had, studied for hundreds and thousands of years previous. So it's really interesting to look at some of those original systems and how they were put into place, and also how different ways that technology, from that movement really has kind of led us into things like a climate crisis and what we can do to get back to the original kind of sentiment of rebirth and getting back to the earth as we say. So it was very interesting following her. I totally recommend checking her out. Her book is phenomenal. She goes through almost every single culture, talking about, you know, how they've created these kind of city planning systems, different types of architecture, et cetera, and really kind of formulated these systems that are now working in what is considered high tech today. So low tech, her word low tech actually means like bringing it back down to when technology didn't really exist and using more indigenous techniques of quote unquote technology to push forward design for everyone, which is really interesting. And it's, I mean, I definitely recommend. She's been in several TED Talks. She's an author. She's working on her second book now. So I definitely recommend checking her out and also listening to the interview that we did together. It's coming out later this week.
I love this person as an influence. She really like spiraled us off down this amazing thought of like, well, what if technology doesn't need to be like wires and metal and silicone? What if technology is roots? And what if it is leaves? Water.
Yeah.
I come back to this photo. This is like a natural bridge made out of roots, and it's almost like all these things that we were like as a dominant culture saying, oh, that's primitive. Like, oh, that's primitive. We do science. It's almost like, no, these are the innovations. This is what we should be looking at. So.
That's actual science in a more logistic manner, which is it's really interesting to think about how design can be created from more natural techniques. And I think as we progress forward, it's definitely something that we're constantly concentrating on within design all the time, is looking at how these things can naturally be made versus it being synthetic. So
it's humbling too.
And I love, not to put you on the spot, and I love that you interviewed her, and I love her. I've followed her for some time, but what was like the most surprising thing from the interview, or what did you learn from your conversation with her?
I think my favorite things, and just really reading from her book, was reading, I mean, honestly, how European washed a lot of these systems were like during colonization. I think that was the biggest eye opener for me, and really talking to her about how that happened, because she's such an anthropologist when it comes to understanding like how we've gotten into this climate crisis, or technology's really taken over from that standpoint. And for me, I think it was so interesting to hear her explain like how water systems came to be in our advanced world, but how they're actually like indigenous communities creating their own water systems. She mentioned the one from Calcutta, India, and how actually the indigenous people around the city actually create their water supply and water sewage supply. And they're not compensated for it in any way. They do it for their own abundance of growing vegetables, etc. But it was just interesting for her to talk about how that whole city depends on that indigenous culture to, do their water sewage system. And I was just like blown away, because I know it's a bigger city. And I think it's just really interesting to see like how, if you look at modern architecture today, and you look at like how your door frames are made, or your windows, or etc., like those are not necessarily like indigenous to your area. And I think that for me is always just such a big wake-up call to kind of see like what could have been or what would have been in those areas versus what we all kind of like have now, which I think is really kind of, I mean, it's fascinating for me. Obviously, I studied architecture a lot with our jobs, specifically my section, but I love kind of like finding new ways that people are doing things. And especially as we're starting to get back, and we talk about this a lot, to self-sufficiency and consumers looking to be more self-sufficient, especially post-pandemic, I project that a lot of people will start to get more and more into this as they're diving into their culture. They're looking at ways to do things for themselves. They'll want to explore this more.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And then my next link really goes with this, actually. It's called the Obsidian Project, and it's founded by Hearst in partnership with the Bad Guild. If you guys aren't familiar with the Bad Guild, they're the Black Artists and Designers Guild within the home industry, and they're actually doing their first Black only designer house and what it would look like from their cultural perspective without it being like, quote unquote, I guess to say, whitewashed in any way. And I think it's really interesting how they're taking this approach. You know, for our industry, designer show houses are very big, and it's a great way for interior designers to kind of brand themselves and market. And this is a great opportunity that Hearst has like partnered with them on, and I'm very excited. It's launching in winter of 2021. So it looks so cool. I'm so excited. But yeah.
That's awesome. Thanks, Jay. Next up is Erza.
Hi everyone, I'm Erza. I'm a culture editor. So my first link here is this company, Cypress Materials, and they've created a paint inspired by blue morpho butterfly wings, which actually get its color from blue light waves reflecting off of their wings, because in reality, they're actually translucent. So like these butterfly wings, this paint will essentially work through reflection. So the color comes through the light waves that reflect off the nanostructure of the paint. And in essence, this paint functions through structural color rather than chemical pigments or dyes. There's a video on the bottom that explains it a little bit better if you want to watch that.
Yeah, let's watch it.
These beautifully vivid blue wings belong to the blue morpho butterfly. But take a closer look and you'll see that they're actually translucent. There's no blue pigmentation involved. Instead, the wing has millions of stacked nanostructures which reflect blue light and allow other wavelengths of light to pass through. This phenomenon is called structural color, and this is where the physical geometry of a material determines its optical properties. And it's possible that this wing could hold the secret to keeping our cities cool. Scientists have been trying to learn from the light-bending abilities of butterfly wings for some time. But fabricating materials with these tiny nanostructures has traditionally been a delicate and expensive process, which is why Cypress Materials is developing a simple way to paint them onto surfaces. These optical coatings are made from synthetic polymers that are designed to self-assemble into ordered structures. It's a bit like spaghetti that straightens itself out, but on the nanoscale. These nanostructures can be designed to reflect specific wavelengths of light, just like the butterfly wing. Why is this a neat idea? Well, it provides an environmentally friendly way of producing colour, replacing the need for toxic pigments or dyes, and can be used in anything from nail polish to cars. You could also paint a heat-reflective coating onto a building using nanostructures that reflect infrared light. In warmer climates, this would massively reduce the demand for air conditioning, providing a more sustainable method to keeping us cool. All with the help of our butterfly's wings.
So I just think this opens up many solutions and functional benefits with color. For example, a treatment that reflects UV light can protect outdoor furniture from fading in the sun. And like they mentioned, the infrared light brings heat, so that coating could be applied to roofs, windows, roads, and so much more. And then they had mentioned that this coating could also be used in self-driving cars, using the light to signal if there's nearby objects close by. And this company says that it expects structural color to appear in consumer goods and cosmetics in about a year or two, automotive within 4 years, and buildings in the next 5.
I love how this ties into what Jay was talking about of like looking to nature for solutions.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that biomimicry that we love.
Yes,
So
definitely. So this next one, it's an outdoor workspace. It's opening in Roslyn's Gateway Park this month. So it's called Outdoor Office. They coined it O2 for short, but they're looking to attract professionals that are seeking a safe and free wellness workspace. So they're really leveraging the natural elements that already exist in the park to create this open air retreat for professionals to look that are looking for productivity-inspired change of scenery. And so we've been talking a lot here at Fashion Snoops about the healing properties of nature, and we really do see the future of workspaces merging in with nature.
That's awesome. Let us know in the chat if you'd like to have an outdoor workspace like this, or if you're too afraid of bees, because I think that would be my first worry, but maybe I have baggage. What's next here?
So then my last one, it's this AI smart service provider, Terminus Group, and they're looking to have its headquarters in a city campus in China, entirely operated by AI. So it's an AI company that wants an AI campus. It makes sense. So in this AI city, people will live in homes with automatically adjusting solar panels and digital assistants that run their lives. So as sunlight hits their homes, the bedroom windows will adjust their opacity to allow natural light to wake sleepy residents. And then once the light fills the room, you have this AI virtual housekeeper named Titan, selects your breakfast, matches your outfit with the weather, and presents you a full day schedule. So after breakfast, you step into your intelligent, fully automated vehicle and begin your commute browsing through global market news recommended by an algorithm. It was saying that as more data is collected and analyzed by the AI, the city will continuously be upgraded. And this software company envisions this city where people, technology, and nature will live and work together. And then aside from this, I was reading that China is making ambitious goals to become the first global superpower for AI. And I think that AI domination will be the new space race and oil for countries in the next upcoming years.
It's interesting, like the aesthetics of the future used to be like no plants, all chrome, all like shiny surfaces, but more and more we're seeing like vegetation brought in. It's like we can't ignore that this is the future that, or the utopia that we want. I think that's like been a big change that I've noticed.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Cool, thanks Erza.
Welcome.
Up next is Hago.
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Hago and I'm the VP of Beauty and Wellness here at Fashion Snoops. So it was really hard to pick a few links because there's so much to share, but mine actually go hand in hand with what both Erza just shared and what Jay shared. So the first one, as you can see, we're always inspired by biomimicry, and I love the illustrations that came from this link. So if you want to keep scrolling down, but you know, I love these because it's just like, you know, we're continuing to learn from nature to develop, and it kind of also goes in hand with the tech aspect of like, okay, we see the curves of a flamingo, you know, what can we create from that? Or like you said, we see the butterfly wings. So, you know, just continuing to look at biomimicry and continuing to be in awe of what we can learn from nature. So I just thought like these illustrations, like the way that it was kind of showing the concept were really cool. I wanted to share this.
Very cool.
Yeah, they're so fun and beautiful. Then my second link is this photographer that I found. His name is Adam Perez, and he works with Adobe Stock, so he's a freelance photographer, but he really wanted to speak to how, you know, representation matters, and obviously we're continuing to talk about inclusivity and diversity, and I just love all these images. You know, he really wanted to speak to community and authenticity, and really just include people, Kura, you can keep scrolling down, and really just include people that historically just haven't been, you know, photographed or have been left out. And I love that there's also just like a softness to all these photographs as well. So he was just, you know, we're working on one of our shifts and it's called like Empathy Revolution. So again, the continuation of, you know, what does diversity mean? What does inclusivity mean? So I just thought like all of these photographs were really, really beautiful.
Yeah, really powerful imagery here.
Yeah, I love these. My next one, so yesterday actually Well and Good had a webinar series about Latinx and wellness. And this goes like what I said hand in hand with what Jay was speaking about. And I loved one of the speakers. Her name is Constanza Eliana, and she actually talked about decolonizing yoga and wellness. And specifically how colonization has taken away spiritual practice in the Latin community, and how it's kind of, you know, when the colonizers came, they kind of like, you know, put bad stigma into spiritualism, or kind of, you know, demonetized it and all of this kind of stuff. So I just loved, you know, everything that she had to say. And, you know, all this is her website, Embody Inclusivity. She has a lot of things that you can learn from her. And I just love that you know, her thing was just about embracing spiritual practice with no shame. I feel like there's been a lot of shame in the past about like, oh, are you a witch? Or like, oh, if you're doing this, or like, you know, a lot, I mean, I'm Latin, and a lot of it was like, you had to like hide, or like, you know, you couldn't really speak about it. And I know now it's becoming a little bit more open, but I love her whole, you know, decolonization movement. And again, speaking, you know, if you look at areas like yoga, you know, a lot of the teachers might look a certain way. So just, you know, speaking to like social impact. So she's just like a great person to kind of check out. And I just, you know, and the whole panel was great, but she just had so much knowledge in that area. So I wanted to share her as an influencer.
Really cool.
And my last one, calm is definitely the word of the year that we're trying to achieve. We worked on one of our beauty shifts, and I think the word calm came out like 500 times. Like so many brands are like embracing calm, creating product lines that have to do with calm. So definitely the word. And then we came across this. So HBO Max has actually created a series, and it's all about the world of calm. So we can watch the trailer, but you know, it's a visual journey about calm to soothe the body and the mind. So we can play some of it if you want.
Listen carefully.
An epic voyage calls to us. Come with me. Let's explore a wondrous world.
A journey so vast, it's impossible for us to truly grasp. Time has worked its magic here. Everything is woven together. Now it's time to rest.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like since the pandemic, anxiety and depression, all these different like mood and mental wellness apps and content have been coming out. It's definitely looks like a cause and effect. So I'm glad people are paying attention to it and creating products that help people. All right, next up is Mallory.
Hi everyone, I'm Mallory. I'm a beauty editor here at Fashion Snoops. I have a lot of links. I don't know if we'll get to all of them, but I wanted to start off with this subject. So in the last like 2-3 months, half a dozen of my friends have suddenly gotten into birding, which is, if you don't know, it's going out into nature and trying to find and spot various regional birds. It's a very old habit, hobby, but I think with everyone wanting to reconnect with nature like we've discussed so far, and wanting safe activities that are alone and outside, it's really taken off. And from what I did with some initial research, it really is growing in popularity in Google searches and hits on the Audubon Society. So I just was kind of taken by this idea of birding and just wanted to explore a few really interesting links related to it. So this is a really great, cute little illustrative story, New York Times article about trying to capture the magic of birding. A lot of people find it very meditative and a way of like almost communing with nature by focusing in and finding these birds. That's why it's also really good hobby for people who have like attention issues or have trouble focusing, because you're by yourself in the serenity of nature, just looking to find this one bird in the quiet of the forest. So it's a really beautiful, I think, activity. So this is a really cute little article. If you have the time to scroll through, it's kind of also about his introduction to birding. So it's really sweet. If you want to go to, let's see. Yes, the next link next to it, birding and conservation. So as many of you may know, the issue of birding also kind of came to light with the Central Park incident, where a birder asked a woman to leash her dog in a known birding area. And this forced the birding community to really grapple with issues of racism that have always been latent within birding. Birding is, of course, a leisure activity, frequently only, practiced by, the leisure classes. So this is a very interesting article, again, by the Audubon Society. So I really like seeing that they're taking ownership of their brand and, being transparent about what their own, transgressions have been. So this was just a very interesting article about the intersectionality of this popular activity and how racism is interwoven into it. And then if you go back to the links, Central Park Birder, that one, yeah. So this I thought was so cool. Christian Cooper, who was the man who was the victim of that hate crime, he wrote this amazing graphic novel that combines elements of how he got introduced to birding with a character who ends up seeing the faces of people of color who have been killed through the lenses of his binoculars. So it's really interesting. It combines so many issues. It's showing how just engaging in a simple hobby is, a hazard if you're a person of color in America today. So it's really powerful, but still also really grounded by this beautiful, just, delightful hobby of birding, which, shouldn't be a life-threatening, hobby. So again, this was a really powerful graphic novel that he wrote that came out of that experience that he had. And Christian Cooper himself is like a huge deal in the birding community. He's been doing it for years. So he's a really cool person to check out as well. And then if you go to the Bird Collective, this is a really fun website that they, again, it's just like bird apparel, which I love. I love the idea of wearing your hobby as kind of like, like a patch. And they do both like t-shirts and bandanas, but they also do these really cute, little patches that, you can add to a hat or like a jacket or a bag. And so I think it's a really cute way to kind of like non-verbally signal to other people that like you're a birder, you're into this hobby. So I love using accessories and fashion to kind of be part of this very, very enthusiastic birding community. From what I've learned in my brief time, it's very active community. So I love this. So yeah, those are my birding links.
Those are cool. The aesthetics of this hobby are really beautiful, and really, I feel like they could inform a really cool product direction.
Oh yeah, definitely. So some other bird links of interest, Fall Sneeze Instagram. I love, if you don't follow, if you want just a daily dose of light humor on Instagram every day, she does these just brilliant and just mildly humorous web comics, and all of the characters are these hyper realistic birds, and they're inspirational, they're funny, and I just, they're usually 4 panels, so if you want to scroll through. Anyway, I mean, her illustrations are beautiful and kind of contrast this like sarcastic humor with some like, Audubon Society level illustrations. So I adore them. You should follow them on Instagram. And then if you actually want to go to the Parrots one, Lindsay on our team sent me this last night. This was also just, a lark, a laugh for us all in these bleak times. Parrots at a UK safari park had to be removed because they had learned somehow and were teaching each other how to swear, which is not only just a hilarious reflection on our human sensibilities of what's appropriate and what's not, but also amazingly indicative of how brilliant nature is and how they are adapting to humans and or even using our terminology amongst themselves. So that's a really funny article. And then just going in my last 2 links, Naked Beauty Podcast is a new podcast focusing on a lot of issues of, beauty and women of color, intersectionality, sustainability. They just had a really great episode with one of my favorite beauty writers, Jessica DeFino, about clean beauty. I just love this podcast. If you are just tuned into the beauty world, want a new perspective, definitely give Naked Beauty a listen. And then my last link, which I feel is really important to include, I saw this on Instagram this morning. This is Cop a Feel, They're all about teaching women how to properly examine their breasts for breast cancer. You may know that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so they have this huge campaign out about what breast cancer looks like, feels like. You know, they're just really, their whole ethos is trying to get women and men, because breast cancer can affect men, to know what the signs are and to do monthly and daily checks. So I just thought this was really important to share for everyone in the audience for their health.
It's a really well branded Instagram too. They
Yeah.
really into that like millennial aesthetic. That's cool.
And that's it.
Thanks so much, Mallory. Next up, we have Lindsay.
Hi, so I had a month to gather, so of course we have a lot to go through, but I came across this last night actually. Internally, we discussed the social dilemma, and Facebook came out with this. And if you slide down to the third part, they actually call it a conspiracy documentary. So I think it's interesting because we've been talking about conspiracies a lot, and Facebook just came out that they're taking all QAnon off their site. So it's interesting to see them use that term against something. I think it's interesting, and I feel like the term conspiracy is now really a way to dismiss anything that you don't want to discuss. So they've kind of used it to their advantage.
That's interesting.
Now, my next one is a satire or a satirical representation of a lot of the discussions that companies are having. So don't worry, this is fake. It's supposed to be tongue-in-cheek. And if you scroll down, it really plays off of these stereotypes that we see within like diversity discussions. And so I personally am I love comedy, and I think this is a way for people who, I mean, might not want to be in that like serious kind of upsetting how we know it all exists. So if you go over to stories, they have actual stories of what people experience in the workplace. So they have like people who've written in and like what kind of stereotypes have happened to them. And then if you go back up to the FAQ, they have actual ways to make a true difference and not just aesthetically.
Cool. It seems like there's a lot of pushback against like woke washing and, you know, companies that are coming out just to get rather than doing it for the reason that it is completely right and just ethical, but rather just to have like a headline or free promotion. So I think this maybe calls attention to the idea that people will not stand for empty gestures or like.
Exactly. That's why they really list like how to make an actual impact and not just as a show. And I think it's also like a jarring term, like rent a minority, like that would trigger a lot of people. And then when you get to the end, he's like, don't worry, it's a joke. And this is how you can fix it.
Totally. Okay.
And the next one is actually called New Discourses. And this is a reaction to the whole woke movement that we're seeing in cancel culture. It actually stemmed from, I don't know if you know about Brett Weinstein. He was a professor and he was like ran off of the campus because he is a scientist and his stance on gender is that it's biological. He's not like transphobic or anything, but he just felt like academia became very intolerant to opposing views. So this is a website created by James Lindsay, who is a PhD, has a PhD in mathematics, was a professor, and started seeing cancel culture start in academia. He actually has all these papers that were like given awards, but they were all fake. And they were all satirical based on this wokeness. So he has, if you go to the top, he has like the encyclopedia, since there's so much new terminology people talk about, grievance studies. And he just started, he really speaks out against how wokeness started in academics, and now we're seeing it bleed into our whole everyday lives, which obviously all of us experience.
Interesting. Yeah, there certainly is this coming up in culture. It's interesting to know that it exists.
And then force protection, this is another kind of pushback. And I know a lot of people get triggered talking about like herd immunity, but this was something signed by 6,500 scientists and medics. And if you go to read the declaration, which I think everyone should read, even if you don't agree with it, it's important to be exposed to what other people are discussing. They say it's a compassionate approach that balances the risks and benefits of herd immunity to those who are minimal at risk of death to their lives normally, while protecting those who have the highest risk. And so these professors and scientists and doctors are looking at the long-term effects of what this lockdown is doing. And we all know that like child abuse has gone up, domestic abuse, drug and alcoholism. So I think it's an interesting like pushback against the media narrative. And this I thought was cool in a way because it shows that everyone is in this together and trying to get through it. And it's just all around the world how schools are opening up and what they're doing to protect themselves.
Yeah, my mom's going through this right now. She's a principal in Toronto, and she wears some pretty interesting safety precaution materials. She's got like the visor, she's got the full body cover. Every kid has to have like, they're calling it like a little passport, and you have to kind of check off that you don't have any symptoms, that you don't have a cough or anything, and then she has to check those every day. So it's quite a time we're living in.
Yeah, it's interesting. My like kickboxing gym opened and we have to get our temperature checked, and they also spray the bottom of our shoes with like sanitizer, which I don't know what that does, but they have interesting precautions for gyms now.
Yeah, I'll have to show her this to show her what the different solutions are around the world.
Yeah, it's cool to see. And it's nice to see kids back together because it's definitely difficult. All right, so next is Halloween 2020. This site is to prepare parents and the kids to get trick-or-treating again. And I mean, ironically, it was Hershey's because they're afraid their sales are going to tank. They collaborated with health officials to create this map, if you go to the bottom, that talks about like the risk and how you should go about being safe on Halloween night. So it's good because obviously Halloween's a lot of fun and we would like it to happen. And so Hershey's got together and created this map for everybody, and it will stay up to date up to Halloween for you.
Oh, that's cute.
We can skip the article, it's just the same. So now I fell into this whole hole of like new ways for burials, and it goes into what Jay was talking about, and Hago was mentioning how looking back to what Native cultures had done. And so this is interesting. It's actually about not even like burying them in a coffin, more of a wrap. And she was inspired by what farmers do with their cows. They've been doing this apparently for years. They found a way so that the full body corpse could regenerate soil. And so now she wants this done for humans. So it's a good read. And I also linked her TED Talk to it. She had grown up with two parents who were doctors, so she was always around the discussion of death. And then she went to school for architecture and was like, there's so much that could be brought to the world through death. And so she's really pioneering this new way of burial. And then, yeah, this is, we love mushrooms here. We always talk about them. This is a coffin made of mushrooms so that it can all decay and become new. And then I have a final example. I went down a YouTube tunnel. Clarity Funerals is this woman who wants to bring people connected back to their, the process of death, because I mean, for me at least, it's like you go to the funeral home, you say your goodbyes, and then you go to the tomb. So this is more about having time with your loved ones. And she said she visited tribes in Asia who keep the corpses in their homes with them. One family had their dead grandma with them for 7 years. And they would go and they fed it and they would talk to it because they really believe they can hear them and all those beautiful different sentiments around the world. And if you go to The Good Death, it's her Instagram. She's very quirky, and oh, she was a morticianer. So her stories are really interesting and personal. Cool. So if you watch her YouTube, you could learn a lot.
We've been talking for a while now about how people are getting less fearful of death and the afterlife. They want to maybe shake up the traditional burial. specifically, yeah, with the I've seen mushroom bags where I think it's probably similar to your coffin, where people want to give back to the earth with their body. They don't want to be separated from it in like a coffin. They want to be reintegrated into the circle. So I think this is a cool.
Yeah, and in like other cultures, they really have like celebrations around the death, and so it's interesting to see the new ways and how you can get more connected.
Totally.
All right, and more mushroom talk. Milo Vegan Leather. The reason that they're really blowing up is because Givenchy, Balenciaga, and Adidas are all in talks with them. So it's a renewable way for the new way to use leather, because we know that even vegan leather can be non-biodegradable, and that's really harmful. So this is a great way to really make sure it's not harming our environment. And so if you go to the next link, of course, Stella McCartney, she's another great person, all about sustainability. And so she's already implementing this. And now there are other huge brands who are also in discussion with the creators of this. And the last one we don't have to do, but I just put it. It's a really nice little way to calm yourself down if you're having like a stressful moment. And it doesn't ask for money, doesn't ask for everything. It's just to make you feel better. So I recommend doing that if you ever have a second that you want to release your worries.
Interesting. So you type in a thing and then it bases the meditation around it?
I mean, it's the same thing every time, but it's nice. It kind of just makes you realize everything will be okay. And it just gives you like affirmations.
Oh, it's a good tool for anyone who's having a stressful day. All right, thanks, Lindsay. Up next are mine. I just have a few quick ones. Something that I found really interesting is this YouTuber, David Dobrik, is probably one of the best known names of Gen Zs. If you guys have kids, then you probably have heard of him. He's got 18 million subscribers on YouTube. He's famous for vlogging daily, but also giving away like luxury cars, or he does this thing where he'll tape like $1,000 to the bottom of a Frisbee and just like throw it to like a random person, which is a whole nother trend in like YouTubing that has gained a lot of momentum. There's a lot of YouTubers that just do like giving away wealth as content. But why I'm talking about him today is that he, kind of true to his content nature, he had 3 of the new Teslas from 2020 that range about $35,000 each in a giveaway. And he said, if you want to win one of these, you should register to vote and then comment on this post. And within 24 hours, he got 100,000 Americans to register to vote. Primarily, these people would be Gen Z to young millennials. I think what's really interesting about this is that, I mean, for one thing, they partnered with headcount.org. So that strategic partnership really paid off for them, but also just the willingness of Gen Z to engage in politics. And it's kind of becoming like the cool thing, the thing that you need to kind of be involved in to be accepted by your peers. So I thought that was a really interesting example of influencers entering politics and people responses to that. My next one is the elephant in the room. I thought this was interesting. So in Thailand, there's all these elephant sanctuaries that work on rehabilitation for elephants. No one's visiting them because no one's able to travel. So they're kind of at this huge issue of how do we afford to keep these animals? How do we feed our families? How do we ensure that they're having like their best life? So what they're doing is that for a 10-minute Zoom call, you can have an elephant enter the chat. And so just in the way that you see my box, maybe underneath it, there will be an elephant. The pricing is interesting. I mean, I guess it is a donation, but it's $75 for 10 minutes and $145 for a Q&A session with the elephant and the experts. So I thought it was an interesting way, even just to frame everyone spending time on Zoom. So how do you enter that space with marketing or with design or with charity? And I think this is a really interesting example of that. Next up, empty chairs on the White House lawn. So if you guys missed it, they have designated this past Sunday was a COVID survivors Remembrance Day. So in honor of this, they set up 20,000 chairs on the White House lawn, and they were just empty. I think what's really interesting about even just humans, like our human nature, it's very hard for us to conceptualize large numbers. So when someone says 20,000, like you understand it's a lot, but you don't really feel how much it is. And I think projects like this, you know, you see 20,000 chairs that should be filled with people, and you really understand the gravity of the situation, and that this is only 10% of the casualties. So I thought it was an interesting way of representing what's happening. And then my final one, I got really interested in this. I love Essence and all the cultural articles that they put out. They're always very on point, very thoughtful. And they were asking the question, what happens to subcultures in the age of algorithms? So I really highly recommend you guys reading through this. When we send you guys, we'll send you all an email with the links after this presentation, but they talked to 7 different people who were there for the ballroom scene in New York, or they were there for like the punk scene in Seattle, and they talk about what it was like and then what has been lost. But everybody kind of brings their own idea. Some people are like, it's impossible to have a subculture now because it gets eaten up so quickly by the internet, like it's just become so accessible. And then other people are like, well, what's so wrong with accessibility? So there's a lot of debates around this. Of course, like as a culture editor, I'm following this to see, yeah, what is the new underground when everything is public on the internet. So highly recommend this one to anyone curious about answering these questions for themselves. Those are all my links. Next.
Ferreira, do you know about like normie culture, like on Reddit, how people are actually like striving to be more normal? I don't know if you've ever heard about it, but it's basically like they make fun of themselves for like being socially awkward, or like for even like Chad and Brad's are in that. It's like, how can we all just try to be more normal? So it's a funny counterpoint to that.
No, I love that idea, that like, because someone in this article, they do talk about how our identities are so specific, and they are essentially, we're all in our own subculture of, you know, bird watching or like being into this video game. Like we're all in this like hyper specific, that there really is no dominant culture anymore to be subversive to. So it's interesting that you bring up that there are people that are like, no, like I want to be that like normie dominant culture again, because it's disappeared in so many ways. That's cool. All right, Nicole, you're up next.
Hi everyone, I'm Nicole Yee, the Kids Wear director. So the company A24, they did Hereditary, Moonlight, Lady Bird, and the Florida Project, just to name a few. They came out with their latest movie, Manari. It's won a bunch of awards at Sundance, and it's about a Korean-American family that have moved to the Ozarks with the hopes of fulfilling their American dream. So here's the trailer.
Oh, sorry.
Steven, look! They're wheels! Wheels? 여기 대체 어디야?
집이지? 우리 새로 시작한다고 그랬잖아. 이게 그거야. 아빠는 빅 가든 하나 만들 거야.
What a wonderful day to be in the house of the Lord. If you're here with us for the first time, please stand. What a beautiful family. Glad you're here.
Does your daddy like that new farm? He growing things good, doing things right.
Yes.
미국 애들은 할머니랑 같이 방 쓰는 거 싫어한다던데.
I don't like Grandma.
걔는 안 그래요. 한국애니까.
Grandma smells like Korea.
야, 뭐라고? 그랜마 스멜?
우리 여기 있다가 망할 거야. 애들을 위해서라도 한 번 더 생각해 볼 수 있잖아.
애들도 한 번쯤 아빠가 뭔가 해내는 거 봐야 될 거 아니야.
깨라 이놈아.
할머니는 진짜 할머니 같지 않아요.
할머니 같은 게 뭔데?
토끼도 만들고 나쁜말도 안 하고 남자 팬티도 안 입고.
Need to find water somewhere. If that soil ain't wet, you're gonna lose a crop. 너랑 아버지 했던 말 기억나? 미국에 가서 서로를 구해주자고 했던 거.
기억해. pretty boy, pretty boy.
I'm not pretty. I'm good looking.
I love that. Thanks, Nicole. I think just what the cultural output of Korea over the past decade has been amazing. It's definitely reached all around the world, as far as like K-pop to even winning Oscars. So definitely a powerhouse of cultural output these days. All right, next up is Jenna.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenna Garassie, and I'm the Director of Content Strategy. And so I recently discovered this UK-based design studio called Dorothy and wanted to share some of their incredible work. So this first link that we're looking at right now, which was kind of the catalyst that started me down this rabbit hole into all of their work. This is their most recent series called Inside Information, and it features cross-sectional illustrations of different retro pop culture objects. So everything like the Nike Air, to the Apple Macintosh. This is one of their projectors. And what I think is so incredible and beautiful about these illustrations is that each cross-section reveals these kind of miniature worlds that visualize historical moments for how each object influenced and transformed culture. So it's this beautiful depiction of how these kind of seemingly irrelevant or kind of familiar objects did so much for culture and changing the trajectory of things that have happened in fashion and music, etc. And what I love so much is that it's just such a beautiful representation of visual communication. So showing a history through visuals and imagery rather than having text. I think it's just, they're stunning. So after discovering this, I went to their site and kind of did this deep dive into all of their different work. So they do a lot of prints that you can shop for and buy. And this is Acid House Love Blueprint. And it's a history of house music that's mapped out onto the circuit diagram of a 303 bass synthesizer. And the print is really organized around key scenes, clubs, and DJs, as well as different important musical moments that really influenced house and dance culture. So again, I think this is a beautiful representation of kind of visual storytelling and speaking to the history of something and how kind of everything connects to one another. And while they've done these kind of blueprints for a lot of genres, this was their first one that also inspired my last link for Dorothy, which is Club Together. So when Dorothy launched the Acid House Love Blueprint in 2018, I believe, they were flooded with feedback from people about their memories of club experiences and nightlife, who they met, where they went, etc. And everyone just really seemed like they wanted to contribute to the print. So in 2019, they decided to create Club Together, which essentially is a place for people to share memories into an interactive map. So basically you can like click on these different places. There's places as well as like individual venues, there's musicians, this gorgeous, beautiful map. They collaborated with this company called Rhythm to make it interactive, and basically anyone can add a memory, so to speak, of what they went to. And while I just, first of all, love this idea of shared memory mapping, I think it's a beautiful depiction of like coming together and like from around the world of shared experiences. I think what's especially powerful right now is this level of meaning that this type of project holds right now. So this was done in 2019, before the pandemic. And I think what's so beautiful is that you get to see, it's almost kind of this like nostalgic world of meaningful moments that people had with interactions with one another. So the idea of going to concerts or going to clubs and venues, seeing different DJs, I think is just this beautiful kind of throwback to a world that we're not really back in right now. And the fact that a lot of these iconic clubs that are mentioned here are closed down either permanently or temporarily. And I wish I could ask them, I mean, I'm curious, I might actually just reach out, but I'm curious how many more people have contributed to this project since the pandemic. But I think it's amazing, and I encourage everyone to explore it. And if there are any meaningful clubs or experiences you've been to definitely add them to this map and share them.
I love this. It's like, how do you map the unmappable? Like, how do you map everyone's memory of a space at a certain point in time? And they did it. It's, I mean, it's astounding.
And it's great how it just becomes this like living place for people to re-experience, especially right now, as we're kind of disconnected from everyone.
I just want to note to anyone, we'll probably go 10 minutes over, but we will send all the links out to you guys in an email. If you miss anything, if you can stay with us, we'd love for you to. But if you have other obligations, we totally understand. But we'll keep going.
So this is my last one. It's quick. But about a month ago, Print Mag started a new column for called The Glazer Nobody Knows, which highlights work from Milton Glaser that people may have never seen before. I love Milton Glaser. I think this also kind of wraps up this theme of visual communication. But for those of you who aren't familiar with him, Milton Glaser is one of the most celebrated visual communicators and design legends, whose most famous work includes the I Love New York logo. So Milton Glaser passed away this June, and shortly after that, Beth Kleber, who's the founding archivist at the Milton Glaser Design Studio Center at the School of Visual Arts, launched this column as a way to offer kind of a fuller picture of his vast talents and projects. So on a weekly or kind of, it's not a consistent time, but she will publish these works that have never really been seen before, some of which have never even been published. And I loved this week's, she shared a series of Fanta ads that he did. And I think it's just a beautiful representation that really highlights his psychedelic style that he really became known for in the 60s and 70s. And is really also, especially that first one, is very reminiscent of the iconic Bob Dylan poster he did in 1967. So if any of you follow Print Mag, or if you don't, and if you are interested in visual communication or Milton Glaser, I highly suggest you check out this column, but it's awesome. And so we expect, I think she's just gonna keep kind of pulling from the archives to show different works from his. And that's it from me.
Thanks, Jenna. Our final links today are from Melissa.
Hi everyone, I'm Melissa Moylan, VP and Creative Head of Women's at FS. And today I'd like to share my first link, which is about the Black in Fashion Council. Some of you may have heard of this. It only started in June with 38 different brands. Now they have 70 different brands that are signed on. And what their mission is to represent and secure the advancement of Black individuals in both fashion and beauty. You kind of scroll through those. And they want to raise the percentage of Black employees in both executive as well as junior level positions. This was something that was founded by Lindsay Peoples-Wagner at Teen Vogue, as well as Sandrine Charles. She's a publicist. And everybody from Ralph Lauren, Tory Burch, Shop Bop, you see a lot of names here, have signed on. Hearst Magazines is one of them. Also IMG Talent, which I think is great to represent Black models in our fashion shows and lookbooks and that sort of thing. I think it's just a really important initiative, and I think it's great that it's gained this much. Something else that isn't included in this article but will include in the links is also that they announced a partnership with Fred Siegel, the retailer in LA, and they're having a contest called Season Zero, and what it is, it would award whoever wins this up to $10,000. There's a couple of other prizes, as well as a mentorship with Fred Siegel, so it's a great platform for visibility.
Awesome.
The next one that I have is a new initiative from Levi's, which is called Secondhand. They are encouraging a sustainable future at a very consumer level. You could just kind of scroll down, Carrera, to see some of the images that they have. I love how they kind of position that vintage denim is kind of already worn in, and so it makes it even better. And the way that this program works is that you drop off your old Levi's pieces in a store. They're going to clean them, and then they list them on this platform, secondhand.levi.com. What I didn't love about it is that the price points are very current. I feel like they would gain a lot more momentum and maybe buzz if they were to, you know, for example, lower the price points there, even to whatever, you know, if this is a vintage denim style from the 80s, I think it'd be cool if they were to kind of reissue that instead of hiking up the price points. But I do think that it's a good overall move, you know, to circulate denim and give it another life.
Do they buy the denim off of the people turning them in?
No, so that's also what I was like, what's the initiative for like the consumer to bring it in? You know, you feel good because you know that it's not going to end up in a landfill and you know it'll be worn again. But I didn't see that there was any form of you know, discount or something if you're doing this with them.
Right, or a donation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
So my next one, this is something new from Amazon, and it's called Amazon One. And this is I think obviously right now we're very much into touchless transactions when we are back into stores. So this is a new alternative way to pay, or this could be implemented from like a loyalty program level. Essentially what it is when you first set it up, it's only available in Amazon Go stores in Seattle right now. You insert your credit card and then you have the option to scan one palm or both. Obviously, we're also concerned about security. They say that palm recognition is considered more private than biometric measures, and you can't identify a person from their palm alone. So I just thought that this was interesting as we go into more touchless solutions at the retail level, and you know, we'll see how things like this grow.
Yeah, I've never heard of palm identification before. That's definitely new to me.
Yeah, in LA where I'm at, we actually have a new Amazon Go store, which I haven't been to yet. So I'm excited to do that. They don't have this yet, but it'll be interesting to see how that technology works. And my final one, it's kind of uplifting. Maybe some of you have heard of this. It's called Artifact, and it's personal podcasts with your friends and your family. I thought this was really beautiful because right now we have this kind of need for human connection and creating bonds. Carrera, if you want to scroll a little bit lower and click on the one that says The Moment, and we could just hear a little bit of a sample from somebody's story.
So, you know, I mean, I was everything. I was concerned, I was terrified, I was nervous, I didn't know what to do. I was a pain in the ass to all the rescue guys because I kept asking them the questions and they kept shoving me away. They actually assigned a police officer to be with me. I was pissy, you know. This one woman came up to me and said, you know, you have to take care of yourself, you're going to go into shock. And I like snapped back at her and I said, I am not going into shock. You know, I mean, you know, so it's the full gamut of emotions that have anything to do with, you know, terror. You know, it was a terrifying experience, to say the least. And you're just sitting there and you're not knowing.
So that was just an example. A lot of the ones that they give are for like getting married or interviewing children as they're growing up. But I just love the idea that, you know, we're connecting with the people in our lives to personally tell their stories. So they have packages and they have people at the Artifact team that will interview, you know, you and your friends and your family on whatever subject you choose. So I thought it was really nice because it's a way to kind of, you know, treasure it and give it an artifact and be able to hear the voices that were important in your life, you know, even when they're gone. So love that.
Yeah, it definitely feels like everyone has a podcast, and now this even brings it further to like expanding it, which in a great way. I think this is really positive that maybe the stories of our elders in our lives can be cemented and recorded in this beautiful way. All right, well, thanks so much, Melissa. That was our last link of the day. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We do this monthly, so please come back next month to hear more some more great links and ideas that we're tracking here at Fashion Snoops. I'm going to pass it over to Sarah just for some closing remarks.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Again, we will be back for show and tell on Wednesday, November 4th. And don't forget to register for our Women's Runway webinar, which is next Tuesday, the 13th. I'll put that link again in the chat box. And be sure to visit us at fashionsnoops.com/events. We have a lot of partner webinars that we're doing with other organizations, and you can see all of those details and register for all of those just by visiting fashionsnoops.com/events. So be sure to check it out. Next week we have a bunch coming up. We'd love to see you at those as well. Be sure to follow us on social media. That's also a great way to stay informed about everything that we are up to and get some more behind the scenes action from our editors like you saw today. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Stay safe and healthy, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.